After 2 weeks without school, I discovered an incredible secret that changed everything forever. Jenna Thompson stood in the dusty basement of her grandparents' old house, heart racing as her fingertips skimmed the rough surfaces of age-old inventions. How had it come to this? With school shut down from the budget crisis, her life felt murky and unsatisfactory, every hour dragging out like an eternity. The promise of science fairs and experiments had evaporated, replaced by the weight of restless uncertainty and the worry dancing in her family's eyes. As she sifted through her grandfather's forgotten notes and blueprints, excitement bubbled within her, but was quickly pushed down by a punch of anxiety. Could she ever be seen as something more than just another teenager in a struggling town? Frustration festered in Jenna like a persistent itch. As she unearthed gizmos, mechanical arms designed to assist those with disabilities, a prototype for a water filtration system, images of her grandfather's mocking success played like a broken record in her mind. Everyone in town remembered how they had dismissed him, a brilliant mind less valued than popular approval. Why had she stumbled upon his spirit now, just as she was wrestling with doubt about her own place in the world? The expectations of her parents weighed heavily on her, their homely faces etched with effort and worry. They never pressured her directly, but the unspoken belief that she could save them from their bleak reality loomed like a specter in the corners of her mind. She felt their hopes intertwining with her ambition until it pressed down like a vice. "Why am I even looking at this?" she thought, pulling on her hair in frustration. A mixture of excitement and despair swirled inside her. What was the point of dreaming big when her community's judgment might shatter her ambitions? Overwhelmed, she desperately sought a path that would not just salvage her dreams, but also honor her grandfather's legacy. But could she confront those who turned their backs on him? Would they even listen? Or would she be just another naive girl with empty hopes? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The thought of entering the science fair clawed at her like a ravenous beast. Each time she would pull out the papers, rough drafts of her project unfurling before her. The laughter of classmates echoed in her skull as though mocking her social alienation. Could she really put herself on display, let alone showcase the brilliance that had belonged to her grandfather? Tension coiled in her gut like a spring, threatening to snap with every passing day. It was unnerving and exhilarating to think that she could meet with her science teacher, whom she had barely acknowledged in school halls, and still find encouragement. The stakes had risen with the fair looming ever closer. Every moment spent preparing became heavier, and she felt the shadows of doubt creeping around her shoulders. What if she failed? What if she became a reminder of everything her grandfather had been denied? The day of reckoning approached, filled with tension that made her veins pulse. When she stepped on that stage, would she find her voice or be swallowed by her insecurities? With uncertainty tightening around her heart, she steeled herself for the inevitable confrontation. The very people who had derided her grandfather awaited her. The moment hung heavy in the air, jaws clenched tightly, and Jenna realized that she stood on the precipice of her family's history, ready to unleash her true self, or be crushed beneath the weight of generations before her. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the basement clutter, Jenna's heart raced not just from anxiety, but from something more potent: determination. Each blueprint she flicked through held not just sketches, but fragments of her grandfather's soul. It dawned on her that these relics weren't just items to be cast aside. They were the foundation of a legacy that deserved to be honored, not buried under the weight of ridicule. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, Jenna pulled the closest prototype toward her, running her hands along its edges as she recalled the stories her grandmother once shared about her grandfather's enthusiasm for science. What if she infused her own passion into his inventions, breathing new life into something once dismissed? Inspiration ignited within her. Flipping through his notes, she mentally started piecing together how she could benefit the community with a project that was both innovative and practical. Gathering her materials, Jenna began sketching her ideas, allowing the sharp pencil to dance across the page. With each stroke, the tangled web of doubt began to unravel. She imagined her grandfather standing beside her, his eyes sparkling with pride. "You've got this." She could almost hear him murmur, urging her forward. It was a liberated feeling, empowering her with purpose. She could demonstrate the value of intelligence and curiosity, and maybe even defy the community's expectations. But a different kind of terror washed over her. Would she do justice to his technology? Could she reverse the narrative of failure into one of hope and renewal? Questions piled on, each more daunting than the last. Gathering her nerve, she jotted down the first draft of her presentation for the science fair. What she would say when she exposed her grandfather's legacy. It would not just be a display of science. It would be a testament to resilience, a story of an underdog who refused to stay down. Days dwindled, ticking down toward the fair as if mocking her frantic pace. Jenna felt a newfound urgency push her, a pulse of fire in her veins. Every evening was spent in the basement, surrounded by tools, prototypes, and an intoxicating mixture of uncertainty and drive. She tore apart old inventions, revamping them and breathing creativity back into designs that once saw no light. Yet, even while her creativity peaked, the specters of self-doubt and societal judgment loomed more prominently than ever. The contrast of day and night mirrored her internal struggles. The brighter side brought promises of hope, while the dark corner of her mind ruminated over every potential failure. Would her teachers perceive her efforts as genuine? Would they appreciate the value behind her work? Or would they dismiss her, just as they had dismissed her grandfather, yielding to the same narrow perception of capability tethered to age and background? As the evening of the science fair approached, Jenna plotted her course. She wasn't merely presenting a project, but confronting an entire community with her grandfather's memory and her own emergent identity. A shy girl about to break out of the confines of expectation, she found herself yearning not just for acceptance, but for recognition. Facing the mirror, she spoke softly to herself. "You're not just his granddaughter. You are Jenna Thompson." The steel in her tone embodied something stronger than resolve. It was defiance, a reality that would reshape her narrative entirely. The science fair dawned, the auditorium bustling with students and parents. As Jenna stood backstage, fidgeting with her notes, the familiar anxiety crept back in. But amidst the tumult of last-minute preparation, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the polished finish of an old trophy, a reminder that she was not merely stepping into the light, but reclaiming a shadow that had long been cast aside. The time had come to face not only the crowd awaiting her, but also the ghosts of judgment that threatened to shackle her. And as the call for her to step forward echoed through the hall, Jenna took a deep breath, her heart pounding like a drum, ready to reclaim the legacy that was hers to tell. The lights dimmed, and the murmur of the audience blended into a distant hum as Jenna stepped onto the stage. The spotlight, a blazing beacon, illuminated her trembling hands, which tightly clutched her notes. The entire room felt charged, a silent acknowledgement of her confrontation ahead. In that moment, anxiety intertwined with resolve, forcing her to disconnect from the swarm of faces staring back at her. She could almost hear her grandfather's voice wrapping around her thoughts, steady and assuring. "Just be yourself, Jenna." Finding her footing against the podium, she placed her notes down. As she scanned the faces of her peers, their eyes devoid of malice but rich with curiosity, Jenna felt the knot in her stomach tighten. Each heartbeat echoed the lingering fears that had stalked her through days of preparation. But she also remembered her passion. She was not just there as a granddaughter, but as an innovator in her own right. With a deep inhale, she launched into her presentation. Today, I want to share a legacy that's often misunderstood. The words flowed, propelled by the essence of her grandfather's spirit, infused within her creations. She explained the mechanics behind his inventions, each term revealing not just technical prowess, but also a personal connection. As she demonstrated the first prototype, a clever twist on an old design, she felt a sense of agency wash over her. When the gears whirred to life under her careful manipulation, a ripple of surprise spread through the room. Faces brightened, not with skepticism, but with intrigue. For the first time she could feel the barriers of her insecurities fracturing. Science is not just about facts, she continued, her voice gaining strength. It's about imagination, creativity, and the courage to overcome failure. Her fingers traced the edges of the device like a child learning to ride a bike, each touch a declaration of her newfound confidence. But then, just like that, doubt crept back in with the weight of scrutiny. What if they found it lacking? An uncomfortable throbbing simmered beneath her ribs as she watched her teacher's poker face, inscrutable and daunting. Would the presentation be seen as a fleeting moment of bravery, or something worthy of acknowledgement? Pushing through the throes of terror, she invited a friend from the audience up on stage to demonstrate one of her grandfather's inventions. A weather balloon that she had meticulously restored. The act of collaboration turned Jenna's nerves into sparks of brilliance. She was not merely procrastinating through fear. She was inviting others into her world. As the balloon ascended into the air, Jenna's heart soared along with it. The crowd gasped in shared delight. There was laughter and applause, and Jenna felt camaraderie shrouded in warmth beneath the harsh gym lights. But even amidst this triumph, a darker thought teased her mind. What if the praise was conditional? What would happen when the moment wore off and reality returned? Could she maintain this newfound confidence beyond the applause, into her everyday life, where judgment remained relentless? As she wrapped up her presentation, a question posed by a fellow student pierced through her bubbling exhilaration. Jenna, do you think your grandfather would have been proud of you? Or would he have criticized you for not sticking to the original designs? The inquiry hung in the air, a thread of tension woven through the applause. Jenna's gut turned over as she grappled with this sudden confrontation. Was she worthy of the praise she had accumulated? Was her independence rooted in authenticity, or simply a reaction to external pressure? The moment felt like a pivot point, a chasm that separated who she was from who she wanted to be. Jenna's response was swallowed by the physical remnants of her grandfather's legacy. The very inventions that had once seemed burdensome now stood as symbols of her journey. I believe he would have wanted me to create, to evolve. Isn't that what a true legacy is? With that, Jenna stepped back from the mic, chest rising as the question lingered. The crowd's response both a promise of acceptance and a reminder of the expectations to come. In this newfound space between fear and empowerment, Jenna realized she was not just carrying her grandfather's legacy. She was also shaping her own narrative, one filled with endless possibility. But the weight of that responsibility began to settle heavily upon her shoulders, stirring questions of what legacy she would leave behind. Little did Jenna know, the real challenge was yet to come. One that would unravel everything she thought she knew about success, identity, and the very essence of her journey. The days following her presentation swelled with a mix of elation and dread. Jenna had stepped into the light, but now she found herself retreating into shadows, unfamiliar ones of doubt and existential questioning. Each morning began the same way, with the echo of applause fading like a distant dream, replaced by the mundane rhythm of her daily life. School felt like a far-off memory, a place where she had shown her raw potential, now overshadowed by the weight of unrealized expectations. This blend of anxiety and introspection culminated in a routine of self-examination. Jenna pored over her notes from the presentation, dissecting each moment, replaying every nervous tick, every smile that had burst forth from genuine delight or unexpected relief. Her father's face, once so vibrant with anticipation, now haunted her thoughts. Had she made him proud, or simply taken a step further away from the legacy he once envisioned? Lost in this cycle of reflection, Jenna sought solace in her workshop, her sanctuary. As she entered the cluttered space, the sense of metal filings and sawdust enveloped her like a comforting embrace. Her grandfather's unfinished creations stood frozen in time, awaiting her touch. She recalled his laughter, the way he lost himself in mechanics, immersing himself in each project as if it were an adventure. Yet she could not mirror that zeal without feeling the heaviness that surrounded his memory. Determined to bridge the gap between their legacies, Jenna decided to tackle a project that had long lingered in her grandfather's sketches. An invention designed to provide sustainable energy on a small scale. The complexity of it both frightened and excited her. This wasn't an homage. It was an evolution. With each tool she meticulously selected, sparks of defiance bloomed within her. As she began constructing, the familiar rhythm of focus staked its claim on her thoughts, clearing the fog. She had always reveled in creation, and in those moments of tightening bolts and selecting materials, she found her identity tethered to the action itself, rather than pleasing others. But just as momentum built, the nagging questions returned. Was she skilled enough? The footprints she stood in felt like shackles, each step weighed down by the gaze of peers and the weight of her grandfather's legacy. What if she stumbled? The notion of failure began to seep in, breeding tension. Yet another part of her screamed. Failure was a step towards innovation. Motivated by a deep-seated desire to carve her path, she dove deeper into this project, ticking off tasks one by one. Hours melted into days, with the workshop illuminated by the soft glow of her lamp. Each piece she perfected became a symbol of resilience, a reminder that she was not just recreating her grandfather's designs, she was making them her own. However, the more she invested herself in this new venture, the more questions about her identity burgeoned. Was she seeking to please others, or fulfilling her own dreams? The line blurred, pressing upon her psyche like the heavy weight of time. As her preliminary prototype neared completion, a sudden knock at the door startled her, jarring her from heady determination. It was her old rival from school, Tyler, known for his biting critiques and fierce competitiveness. Jenna's mind raced. Tyler's presence represented the very essence of her fears. Would he mock her attempts or offer insight? Before she could ponder further, he stepped inside, and their eyes locked. "Jenna?" he said, his tone laced with an unpredictable mix of sincerity and challenge. "I heard about what you did. I know you're working on something new." This was not the moment for distractions. The moment felt pivotal, a juncture at which Jenna would either retreat into herself or seize the opportunity to confront her own narrative. "Yes, I am," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Do you want to see it?" The air hung thick with anticipation as Tyler's expression flickered, revealing an inkling of respect. Or was it curiosity? Jenna knew she was standing on the precipice of a defining moment, one that could shift the course of her journey. The uncertainty was inescapable, but so was her desire to push boundaries, to evolve beyond the girl who had just once trembled on stage. "I'd like to," he finally said, the challenge evident in his gaze. Jenna felt her pulse quicken. Would this encounter bolster her resolve, or unravel her once more? She took a deep breath and nodded, inviting him into her workshop, both a step into a future and a leap into the unknown that would demand her very best. As they approached the workbench, A whirlwind of thoughts competed in her mind. The path forward was fraught with uncertainty, but a glimmer of something new emerged. The journey had only just begun, and the weight of expectation no longer felt like a burden. It surged within her, daring her to succeed. What Jenna didn't know was that this venture would not only culminate in a breakthrough, but also force her to confront the essence of her own values and identity. Would the outcome redefine her path, or would it unravel her even further? Jenna's heart raced as Tyler stepped closer to her workbench. His initial curiosity was now replaced by an intensity that both ignited her ambition and stoked her anxiety. She could feel the weight of his scrutiny as he examined the meticulously arranged tools and components. The lifeblood of her nascent invention, the prototype loomed large, a conglomeration of metal and aspiration that held her dreams in its grasp. "What exactly are you working on?" Tyler asked, his skepticism mingling with genuine interest. Jenna took a moment to gather her thoughts, weighing the legacy of her grandfather against her own burgeoning identity. Was she ready to divulge her project, her vision? She knew she had to find her voice, to reclaim the narrative that had once been dictated by others. "It's a sustainable energy generator," she stated, summoning the confidence she had felt on stage, daring to ignite a flicker of pride in her own words. "It harnesses wind power in a compact design, tailored for small-scale use." She watched for Tyler's reaction, his brows furrowing slightly in disappointment or intrigue. It was hard to tell. "That's ambitious," he admitted, an air of grudging respect edging into his words. "But what's your angle? Just doing it to prove a point? Or something more?" The challenge in his voice pricked at Jenna's defensiveness, but instead of retreating, something inside her flared. It was a chance to articulate her purpose, to disentangle herself from the shadows of expectation. "It's about impact, not just doing something for the sake of competition or recognition," she responded, her tone firm. "It's about contributing to a legacy, my own. I want to create something meaningful and innovative." The air shifted, a subtle pivot from rivalry to collaboration. The slight softening of Tyler's gaze transformed the atmosphere, urging Jenna to push further. This was no longer merely about proving herself. It was a moment to embrace her aspirations and confront her fears. "Can I help?" Tyler asked, brushing aside the competitive mantle he had often worn. Jenna hesitated, the initial instinct to decline rising within her. Yet, as she considered the offer, she recognized the value of collaboration. It could be an opportunity to learn, to refine her work, to weave in new perspectives that could only enrich her project. "All right," she finally conceded, curiosity mingling with apprehension. "But we're going to do this my way. This is my vision." Tyler nodded, a hint of admiration evident on his face. "Deal." As they began dissecting the prototype, Jenna reveled in the energy of shared ideas. Pointer adjustments turned the initial design into something more practical, and Jenna found herself excited by Tyler's insight. He challenged her assumptions, pushing her to think critically about every facet of her creation. It wasn't just a project. It became a dialogue between two minds exploring innovation. Yet, with each improvement came an undercurrent of doubt that wormed its way into her consciousness. Jenna found herself reflecting on their partnership. Was she deferring too much? Was she compromising her identity as she let Tyler's ideas shape her work? The questions buzzed incessantly, demanding to be addressed. By the end of their first collaborative session, the prototype stood in a more advanced form, its elements more coordinated than they had ever been. But Jenna felt the lingering shadow of her initial fears inching closer. Had she truly made it her own? Or was she simply a passenger on a journey Tyler was carving? As they stepped back to admire their work, Tyler smiled. "You know, this could actually change things." "Yeah," she muttered. But a knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach. The prospect of change and recognition sounded appealing. But at what cost? Would the final product reflect her essence, or would it become another monument to someone else's vision? The deeper they dived into the project, the more revelations seemed to surface. Not only about the invention, but about Jenna herself. The intensity of her struggle amplified, throbbing under the surface. There was a thin line between collaboration and surrender. She needed to determine where her boundaries lay. "What's next for us?" Tyler's voice broke through her turbulent thoughts, prompting a newfound need for clarity. Jenna narrowed her focus, grounded by the palpable energy of the moment. They needed a plan, one that fortified her voice while still incorporating fresh ideas. "We take the prototype for testing," she decided, a sudden surge of determination electrifying her tone. "But we do it on my terms, and I'm going to own every step." As the air crackled with expectation, Jenna realized this was not just about the prototype, but also the challenge of defining herself within it. Would each test not only evolve her creation, but also her very understanding of her potential? With that thought, a calm conviction settled over her. She was ready to carve a path that balanced both her legacy and ambition head-on. But an unsettling question loomed. Would the journey expose her deepest fears, or catapult her into the identity she was striving to solidify? As they prepared for the next step, Jenna felt the weight of both possibility and doubt pulsating within her. A heartbeat away from something transformative, yet needing to confront the reality of its impact. She knew this adventure was just beginning. Would she emerge with newfound clarity, or would this exploration shatter the foundations she'd been so carefully reconstructing? The testing phase approached like a storm cloud, heavy with both promise and dread. Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that each passing day chipped away at the crafted image she had of herself. The prototype was no longer just metal and wires. It became interwoven with her identity, amplifying her fears and aspirations. As the scheduled testing day crept closer, the reality of her collaboration with Tyler forced her to confront the complexities that lay beneath the surface. In the days leading up to the test, Jenna immersed herself in documentation, sketches, and calculations. Each line on the page felt like a tether to her past. She revisited her grandfather's journals, absorbing his thoughts on innovation and the kind of legacy he had wanted to create. But where his words inspired, they also stung. He had lived in a world dominated by traditional energy sources. Jenna's pursuit challenged that paradigm. She was treading into uncharted waters, and the sea of uncertainty surged around her. "Are you ready?" Tyler's voice broke through her reverie one afternoon in the workshop, startling Jenna. She met his gaze, momentarily unsure if he was truly concerned, or merely seeking to gauge her confidence. "I'm as ready as I'll ever be," she replied, brushing a hand through her hair, trying to quell the rising tide of doubt threatening to engulf her. Despite her outward demeanor, Jenna's internal monologue was relentless. What if the prototype failed? What would that say about her vision? Would Tyler's contributions undermine her existence? She had promised to own every step, yet here she was, standing on the brink of vulnerability, reliant on a collaborative force she struggled to view as equal. As they assembled the prototype in the testing ground, she could feel the weight of judgment lurking in every corner. A group of peers gathered, some out of curiosity, and others out of competition. Tyler's presence beside her injected a sense of camaraderie, yet it also served as a constant reminder of her insecurities. Was he the co-creator or the lead innovator? The lines blurred with every part they installed together. "Just remember," Tyler said, lifting a wrench with a reassuring smile. "It's a learning experience, no matter the outcome." Her breath caught. His words echoed with truth but felt like a subtle dismissal of her fears. Did he assume she needed coddling? She had to remind herself that this was her narrative, The invention was born of her blood, sweat, and relentless nights of conceptualization. "Let's put this to the test," Jenna declared, her heart pounding as she activated the prototype. The hum of machinery filled the air, an exciting crescendo mingling with the sharpness of nerves as the generator whirred to life. She felt the shift in the atmosphere, aware that all eyes were on her creation, evaluating and dissecting its every move. With each passing moment, the prototype began to stabilize, but Jenna's mind raced with questions. Was it acceptable to celebrate a modest success, or would that validate Tyler's influence more than her own? The balance between their contributions felt like tightrope walking over a chasm of self-doubt. Then, suddenly, a flickering light indicated an error, one she hadn't anticipated. Panic surged through her veins. Her hands trembled as she scanned the array of components. Tyler's reassuring presence shifted into a silent encouragement. He raised an eyebrow, silently asking for her move. Jenna inhaled deeply, the weight of the moment anchoring her resolve. "I need to fix this. Give me a minute," she urged, determination crystallizing within her. This was her turning point. Everything she'd worked toward had led to this moment. She knelt down, hands deftly adjusting the wiring. The familiar rhythm of problem-solving igniting the spark of ingenuity she thought she'd lost. As she worked, clarity washed over her. The experience was not a battleground for dominance, but a fusion of ideas. She didn't need to compromise her vision. Instead, she aimed to refine it through collaboration. The prototype became the embodiment of her ambition, with Tyler as a catalyst, rather than a hijacker of her dreams. Emerging victorious, she reconnected the final piece, and with bated breath from her audience, she initiated the launch sequence again. The humming morphed into a powerful crescendo, and the energy generator stabilized, thrumming with potentiality. In that fleeting moment, Jenna tasted triumph, a glimmer of acknowledgement reflecting in Tyler's eyes. Her heart surged with newfound clarity. She was no longer wrestling with who she needed to be for others. She was simply being herself, embarking on a journey that would define her own legacy. The applause from her peers broke through the moment of introspection, igniting a wave of exhilaration. Yet, as exhilaration surged, the pulse of another unsettling thought began to emerge. What if the prototype didn't just work, but also soared beyond her aspirations? Would she be prepared for the implications that awaited her? Or would newfound success reveal layers of herself she wasn't ready to confront? As the cheers faded into the background, Jenna became acutely aware that this path was only beginning to unfold, and the shadows of doubt lingered still. The real test was yet to come. The weeks following the test felt like a whirlwind. The prototype's success propelled Jenna into a realm she had only dared to imagine. Yet alongside the excitement, a daunting weight bore down on her shoulders. She was no longer just the engineer behind an innovative design. She was thrust into the spotlight, facing recognition as a leader, a title she had never fully embraced. Every conversation echoed with admiration, but lurking beneath the surface was a creeping sensation of isolation. Colleagues, once peers, now regarded her with a mixture of awe and envy. Each interaction seemed laden with unspoken judgments. Jenna found herself strategizing her responses, her mind buzzing with anxiety about how to navigate her new role. "Jenna, can you step into my office for a moment?" The request from her supervisor, Derek, jolted her from her thoughts, a tangle of apprehension and anticipation blooming within. She had hoped for guidance on the next steps, yet the uncertainty of what awaited her turned her blood cold. Upon entering, Derek leaned back in his chair, an inscrutable expression on his face. "First of all, congratulations on the successful prototype. We're all talking about it," he began, that word, "we," thundering in Jenna's ears. "But I want to discuss the upcoming funding round." She shifted in her seat, clenching her fists in her lap. This was a pivotal moment, a chance to solidify her place in the project's future. "What is it you need from me?" she asked, trying hard to keep her tone even. Derek paused, assessing her before continuing. "We need a solid presentation to convince investors. Your insights and vision are crucial. Can you lead this?" Every word he spoke resonated with both opportunity and pressure. Discussing future investments meant she would need to present not only the prototype's effectiveness, but her personal journey and the vision for the future. What if they saw her as a fraud? The doubts rushed back, pulling at her resolve. But deep down, another voice insisted she didn't need to conform to expectations. "Absolutely," Jenna replied, the word escaping her lips with a newfound fierceness. Making the decision ignited a spark within her, crumbling the barriers of self-doubt piece by piece. As she returned to her workspace, she found herself enveloped in a chaotic excitement. She couldn't allow her anxieties to drown her ambitions. Instead, Jenna channeled her energy into crafting her presentation, digging deep into the mission that fueled her invention. Late nights returned, her desk scattered with papers, prototypes of slides, and sketches. Intent on her goal, Jenna scrutinized every angle of her story. It was about more than just the mechanical details. It was the emotion, the drive behind the creation, the push against conventional energy sources. But as she poured herself into this narrative, another internal struggle emerged. Each accolade she received felt accompanied by an unwelcome competitor, Tyler's background and connection to the energy sector, which loomed like an unshakable shadow over her accomplishments. "Are you okay?" Tyler had asked her one afternoon, his tone laden with concern as they were both in the workshop. Jenna could feel the intensity of his gaze as he inquired about her overwhelming workload. "Just fine. Perfect, actually," she replied, forcing a smile that felt more like a mask. She didn't want to divulge her uncertainties, the churning doubts that threatened to unearth her newfound confidence. "Let me know if you need any help, okay?" His words, though genuine, sent her spiraling. Was he offering support, or was this a precursor to further overshadowing her? The thought lingered, testing her resolve as she wrestled with the implications of success. Would she falter at the precipice of her dream? Or could she rise above insecurities, carving out a defined foothold in this new world? As the day of the presentation approached, Jenna stood at the edge of transformation. She remained haunted by a potent question. Was she ready to define who she was in this uncharted territory? The answers lay just beyond her grasp, tantalizing and elusive. With her heart racing, she finalized her slides, a bearing of her hopes and fears. In that moment, she realized this was not just a test of her intellect or capability. It was a challenge to own her narrative. As she rehearsed her speech alone one evening, a flicker of uncertainty emerged, mingling with determination. She paused, mind racing. Had she prepared enough to fight the doubts that would undoubtedly creep in? Tomorrow would reveal whether she could solidify her newfound identity, or if she would somehow lose herself in the expectations of others. The morning would arrive with consequences, and now Jenna teetered on a precipice. The moment was drawing close. Would she step forward into the unknown, or would retreat into the familiar shadows of self-doubt win the day? The day dawned, a bright canvas smeared with Jenna's anxiety. Her stomach twisted as she safeguarded her meticulously crafted slides, each click eliciting a symphony of self-doubt in her mind. The conference room loomed ahead, its glass walls both a beacon of opportunity and a barrier isolating her from safety. She adjusted her blazer, her flimsy armor against the intensity she anticipated. As she entered the room, a hushed silence defined the atmosphere. Her colleagues settled into their seats as Jenna arranged her notes, trying to capture the moment with a steady breath. She acknowledged Derek, who sat in the front row, his expression a mix of encouragement and expectation. But it was Tyler standing behind him, arms crossed, that triggered her unease. Their previous conversations replayed in her mind like a loop, the concern laced with motives she couldn't quite decipher. "Good morning, everyone," Jenna began, her voice slightly shaky, yet determined to break the spell of silence. "Today, I want to share the vision behind our energy prototype, but more importantly, why I believe it matters." Her words struck a chord as she detailed the mechanics, the environmental implications, and the potential for innovation. The initial enthusiasm in her voice chased away some of the shadows that crept at the edges of her consciousness. Yet, just as she found her rhythm, a wave of doubt threatened her cadence. "Remember, this isn't just about data. It's personal," she continued, redirecting her narrative towards the heart of her creation. Her passion. Her mission. She felt the audience's gaze shift, transforming from mere observers to engaged participants in her story. As her slides shifted from technical data to the emotional core of her journey, she noticed the slight shift of Tyler. His posture unmoving, but his eyes betraying an intensity. What was he thinking? Anxiety jostled her composure, but she pressed on, deepening her conviction with every word. Yet, halfway through her presentation, she encountered an unforeseen obstacle. Derek raised a hand, his brow furrowing. "Jenna, you've outlined your motivations well, but how will you ensure scalability? Investors will focus on the practicality of implementation." The question hung in the air like a dark cloud threatening rain. Jenna felt her heart plummet. She hadn't anticipated this angle. Thoughts raced through her mind. Did she meticulously prepare for the journey of inspiration, only to falter on grounding concepts? She forced her mind to navigate the terrain of the question, competing with her self-doubt. "Thank you for that point, Derek. Scalability is crucial," she said, striving to anchor herself. "We're already in discussions with potential partners who align with our vision and have the infrastructure to facilitate this transition." As her words tumbled out, clarity began to supersede her fear. Each point she articulated struck back against the restraints of trepidation. Just then, she exchanged a fleeting glance with Tyler, who seemed to nod slightly, his stance shifting ever so slightly toward support. The hidden rival was melting into an unexpected ally. The final moments of her presentation hurtled toward her like an approaching storm, damningly beautiful and exhilarating at the same time. She addressed the room, a renewed fire in her speech. "This project represents not only a shift in energy technology, but also a challenge to conventional thought. Together, we can reshape a future that truly values sustainability." As she concluded, the swell of applause consumed her, an unexpected embrace that drowned out the flickering doubts. Breathless, she stood with her heart pounding, realizing she had not only presented a project, but had also adopted a new identity. The suffocating isolation she felt during those first weeks began to dissipate, replaced by a burgeoning sense of belonging and empowerment. After the meeting, Jenna felt a mixture of exhilaration and exhaustion wash over her. But a lingering question draped itself across her thoughts. How would this burgeoning confidence sway her relationships at work, especially with Tyler? As she glanced toward him, he approached with an expression Jenna couldn't quite decipher. "Hey, I think you did great today," he said, sincerity resonating in his voice. There was warmth, almost unexpected. "Thanks. It felt different," Jenna replied, amazed at how her words hung in the air, poised for a deeper understanding. "Different? How?" he prompted, with an earnestness that struck her as vulnerable. The moment hung between them, charged with possibilities and implications she hadn't anticipated. Maybe this was the beginning of something larger, beyond the project and her own journey. Perhaps it was time to confront not just her professional path, but the hidden dynamics brewing beneath the surface of her workplace. With each passing moment, Jenna could feel an awakening. Not just within herself, but in the complex web of relationships surrounding her. And that awakening set the stage for encounters that would test her resolve even further as the next meeting of investors approached, where the stakes would escalate beyond her wildest fears. Would she be able to wield her newfound identity against external pressures? Or would old insecurities claw back to claim their hold? The 2 weeks following Jenna's riveting presentation were a whirlwind of intense preparation and lingering uncertainty. Every day felt like a marathon, with deadlines looming like shadows. Investors were circling, and her phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from team members, each inquiry tightening the grip of expectation around her. As she sat at her desk, the chaotic energy of the office surrounded her. Voices mingled with the click-clack of keyboards, the brewing of coffee, punctuated by laughter in the break room. The noise enveloped her, a contrast to the focuses she desperately sought. She had found a niche, a purpose, but now the question was how to navigate this newfound visibility and the responsibilities that accompanied it. "Jenna, can we brainstorm for a minute?" Derek's voice broke through her concentration, and she nodded, her gut churning. Derek was the kind of colleague who efficiently managed projects, but she knew that to him, she was still the new player in an established team. As he closed the door behind him, her stomach twisted with anticipation. "What's on your mind?" she asked, trying to maintain composure. "We need to refine our pitch to ensure it resonates with investors," he began, gesturing to the screen of her laptop still displaying her slides. "I want us to be prepared for their questions, especially after your successful presentation. It's imperative we maintain that momentum." She nodded, absorbing his words but feeling an inner conflict brewing. Derek was right. She needed to bolster their case, but a part of her bristled at the idea of merely being a cog in a machine. "Absolutely, but I think we shouldn't lose sight of the core mission. It's not just about the numbers, it's about the impact," she asserted, summoning her earlier conviction. Derek arched an eyebrow, assessing her with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "Sure, but you know the industry. They want facts. Can you balance that with passion?" Instantly, she felt the pressure mount. His question rattled within her. Could she find that balance? Earlier, during her presentation, the passion had merged with the technical, but now the fear of reverting to her less confident self threatened to consume her. "Let me think about it," she replied, feeling the weight of her own hesitance. As he left, Jenna turned her attention to her notes, but her thoughts flitted to Tyler. The brief interaction after her presentation had sparked something profound within her, igniting a desire not just to succeed professionally, but to forge meaningful connections. Perhaps she needed Tyler's perspective. He had experience, and in that tormented realm of uncertainty, his support might give her clarity. With determination, she approached him later in the break room, where he was standing with a coffee cup in hand, a casual yet inviting demeanor that eased her tension. "Would you mind if we talked about the upcoming investor meeting?" she ventured, her heart racing. "Of course," he said, leaning against the counter, his interest apparent. As she explained her vision, she noticed Tyler's brows furrow in thought, but he listened intently. "You're right about the impact," he finally said. "Investors need to feel that emotional connection if we want them to hop on board. Maybe intertwining personal stories can amplify that." Jenna's mind whirred with possibilities. "I'd love your input," she confessed, a thrill surging within her that felt new, daring. "Let's collaborate," he offered, a grin breaking across his face that contrasted sharply with her anxiety. "I think we can create something compelling together." Jenna nodded, invigorated by the prospect of teamwork rather than competition. This was not the lens through which she had seen their dynamic before, but if they could align their goals, perhaps they would both grow. However, as they settled into a rhythm of brainstorming, another wave of doubt flickered at the edges of her mind. Would their combined efforts be able to impress the investors? Or would it all collapse under scrutiny? The underlying tension simmered, and she realized once more that navigating this new team dynamic in her role was like walking a tightrope. One misstep could send everything tumbling down. As the meeting approached, Jenna couldn't shake off the looming pressure. Preparing to face the investors would demand that she confront not only her professional ambitions, but also the vulnerability that personal growth required. But what if this intense effort opens up a door to her true leadership potential? A risk she never thought she dared to take. The stakes were rising, and with every brainstorm session involving Tyler, she felt on the cusp of a transformative revelation. Yet even as she felt bolstered by collaboration, Jenna could not ignore the whispers of fear urging her to retreat into old habits. The complexity of emotions coursing through her set the stage for the true test of her strength. What if she had to face not just investors, but her fears of inadequacy, head-on? As the tension brewed, she wondered what that confrontation would bring, and if she was truly ready to embrace it. The day of the investor meeting arrived, and Jenna felt the anticipation settle heavily upon her. Each ticking second felt like a countdown echoing her uncertainty. She stood once more in front of her carefully curated slides, the very essence of her journey now imbued within them. But beneath the polished exterior lay a torrent of emotions, a mosaic of exhilaration, fear, and resolve. As she entered the conference room, the atmosphere crackled with energy and expectation. Investors sat before her, faces alight with curiosity, skepticism palpable in the air. This was not merely a presentation. It was a declaration of her ambition, and Jenna's determination to embrace this moment surged within her. This was her arena, a chance to prove not just the viability of their invention, but her own capacity for leadership. "Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here today," Jenna began, her voice steadying as she made eye contact with the audience. Derek, Tyler, and a collection of faces she had yet to fully decipher. Today, I want to share with you the story behind our energy prototype, why this project matters, and how we can collectively reshape our energy future. As she introduced the innovative design, she infused her narrative with the pulse of her emotions. The struggles, the triumph, the legacy of her grandfather intertwined with her own aspirations. Each technical point felt less like data and more like a vivid tapestry showcasing her journey. The crowd's attention was palpable, their shifting expressions slowly replacing skepticism with intrigue. "Every prototype has a purpose," she declared emphatically, "and this one is founded on my commitment to forge a sustainable future that challenges outdated conventions." The focus shifted as she wove in a personal story. Her grandfather's setbacks and her own fears of inadequacy had become vital to her drive as they emphasized resilience amidst critique. When Jenna introduced her prototype's impact on energy sustainability, she felt the warmth of Tyler's supportive presence in the back of the room, reinforcing her resolve. This collaboration had transformed her vision, had become a testament to the power of partnership, not only shaped by shared ambitions but fueled by mutual respect. As questions swirled in response, she navigated inquiries about practicality and scalability with growing confidence. Each answer unveiled layers of her understanding and commitment to this project, showing her evolution from the uncertain girl searching for approval to a determined innovator eager to carve her path. "You've certainly given us compelling information," one investor remarked, gratitude reflected in his eyes as he leaned forward. "But how do you intend to bring this vision to fruition?" Jenna paused, her heart racing once more, the moment now crystallizing before her. "With your support, we have the opportunity to innovate sustainably together," she replied, her voice unwavering. "But we also need to engage our community, show them the value of transforming traditional energy use into collaborative and sustainable practices. This is not just a project destined to sit on a shelf. It is an invitation to create a legacy." The atmosphere transformed as she watched recognition dawn on their faces, curiosity morphing into eagerness. In that moment, The validation she longed for settled comfortably within her. She wasn't merely the granddaughter of a brilliant inventor, nor just a teenager with ambitions. She was Jenna Thompson, a leader stepping onto the stage of her professional narrative. The applause erupted as she concluded her presentation, and a wave of exhilaration washed over her. The experience of presenting had transformed her. Once a manifest of doubts, now replaced with a rock-solid foundation of confidence. The question of identity had morphed. She was not just rooted in past shadows, but thriving in the light of accomplishment. Afterward, as conversations ignited around her, and interest from investors shifted toward tangible action, Jenna caught Tyler's eye, his expression filled with pride and admiration. They exchanged a knowing smile, an unspoken bond affirming their collaborative journey. The partnership had not only fostered creativity, but had catalyzed a pivotal growth within her, pushing boundaries she had once deemed insurmountable. Days later, as she reflected on the meeting and the excitement of feedback she was receiving, she realized that beyond the accolades lay the real achievement. Jenna had stepped into her power. She had achieved not only recognition for her ideas, but also a profound personal transformation. The anticipation of success had given way to a deeper personal conviction. She proved to herself, now grounded in her identity, that surrendering to fear was not an option. Jenna was no longer defined by the specter of her grandfather's legacy. She had woven her own story, infusing it with authenticity, and coming full circle as a strong, innovative individual. She had conquered the doubts and affirmed her right to be seen and heard. The journey ahead would inevitably present new challenges, but Jenna stood prepared for whatever lay beyond. She was not just participating in the energy industry. She was poised to become a beacon of change within it. For the first time, the horizon stretched wide and bright ahead of her. You need to subscribe now to follow Jenna's journey as she continues to overcome life's evolving challenges. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your thoughts and theories about Jenna's transformation below. I want to hear from you. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need inspiration and motivation to break free from their doubts. Let's spread the message that growth is possible.